Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, here in the middle of a workday thinking about boxing. Let's think about boxing together. But remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let's talk hookers, and I'm talking about boxing hookers, right? Matthew Macklin, interesting fighter from the United Kingdom. He throws primarily hooks. He's what I call a mid-range hooker. In other words, he comes, he's right in front of you. He's trying to take out your rib cage, right? If you can't get him off of you, you're going to have problems. Once he slips your jab, like he did against Felix Sturm, he's in your face. I'm sure most times he's the toughest man in the gym. He'll take big punches to land his, right? He is there to fight you, right? Now, just imagine for a second if Matthew Macklin was actually able to fight not in front of you, but actually a little bit off at the side, kind of like how I am in this video, just a little off at the side. And just imagine if Macklin's game wasn't to walk you down and come forward, get in your face, and hit you with hooks. But just imagine if Macklin, while playing the angles, being just off to the side, forcing his opponent to turn to get him, right? Neutralizing punches that his opponent has simply by requiring the opponent to literally throw the punch across his body to hit him off at the side. Just imagine if Macklin could actually be a hooker while being off at the side and backing up. In other words, he's allowing you to come forward while he's skillfully off at the side, away from your jab, but he knows he can hit you with his right hook because of where he is, right? And he's able to continually move around the ring. He doesn't even keep you off of him with a jab. He's literally throwing hooks, but he's doing it from angles that are hard to block, right? Since he's throwing it from over here and not in front of you, it's hard for you to see some of the punches that he's hitting you with. And because he throws punches with a deliberate loop, it's even hard to block the punch. You literally can't block the punch away from your body, unless, of course, you're Vitaly Klitschko. Rather, you need to actually block the punch, block parts of your body, hold your hand up close to your face so the punch doesn't hit you on the chin, right? And let's say as you step forward and try to corner the guy, rather than the guy going straight backwards, like Mikhail Kessler does, where you know where he's going to be even as he backs up, just imagine you're dealing with a guy who, as you come forward to corner him, he's going sideways. He's keeping the angles going, right? I believe that's Orlando Salido. Let me point out, too, that the best part of Freddie Roach's game as a trainer is how he teaches guys to literally move at odd angles, right? You never see Manny Pacquiao just simply going straight back. He's trying to dart to the side, right? Now, Orlando Salido dominated that first fight with Juan Manuel Lopez. When you're analyzing a fight, you cannot go by the scorecards. The fight was in Puerto Rico. I have no idea how all three judges saw this fight as even. Salido was dominating Juan Manuel Lopez. Dominating. Now, I have a theory that says that when you're an underdog and you're fighting a cultural favorite, a guy who's big in the in the area, right? You're practically starting at a 2-round disadvantage, right? Especially when you're the lesser known fighter, because these judges want to protect their positions, and it's easier to explain why you've taken, Juan Manuel Lopez in a round as opposed to Orlando Salido. But make no mistake, that first fight was lopsided. I would encourage everyone to actually look up Salido's comments following the fight. They're excellent. Salido maintains that he knew relatively early on in that fight that he could knock out Juan Manuel Lopez. And of course, gamblers like me, and I'm not a boxing trainer, I haven't boxed. I'm just a guy trying to make money on the sport. Gamblers like me know that Juan Manuel Lopez has a problem with hookers. Take a look at the last few rounds of his fight against Rogers Matagua. Right? Not only that, Lopez, as good as he is, and he was unbeaten going into the Salido fight, like Mikael Kessler, another successful fighter, Lopez isn't that complicated. Right? Salido is working angles. You see him thinking. He's a hooker who's actually on the move. He's a mobile hooker. He's two-handed. He's always ready to throw hooks. They're hard to block, and he's working angles. With Lopez, he's coming forward. He's inverted. His dominant hand is actually his lead hand. He's trying to batter you with it. The problem with guys like that is when they're in against guys who can move, who can play the angles, who know how to neutralize that lead punch, they don't have the punch, the secondary punch behind that lead punch to come back in the fight. Now, I know BoxRec.com has the Orlando Salido Juan Manuel Lopez rematch as a 5-star out of 5-star fight. And I know that conventional wisdom, at least in the mainstream media, is that Lopez had an off night. Lopez didn't have an off night. He got systematically beaten by a better fighter. In addition to not looking at the scorecards on that fight, which should have had Salido ahead, in my opinion, by at least 3 rounds, right? Don't look at the records of the fighters, because understand, boxing is not standardized. Some guys fight better fighters than others, and some guys start their careers with extensive amateur backgrounds that prepare them to deal with the veterans they fight early in their careers. But that's not Orlando Salido. He actually started the rough way, right? He hopped in the ring with men older than him, and he didn't know how to fight. He doesn't have an extensive amateur background. He got roughed up early in his career. Don't look at the 11 losses and think that this guy's soft. No, look at what the guy has done since then. Let me also make another point stylistically. I know online here I have a video where I have openly said that I'm a skeptic of Yorkis Gamboa. And I know I'm going to get emails that say, hey, didn't Gamboa take apart Orlando Salido? Yes, he did. But let's think it through. If you're a guy playing the angles and you're keying off of the position of your opponent, in other words, my opponent's here, I'm off at the side, right? That's very hard to do against a two-handed ambush fighter who keeps moving, right? It's very hard to play the angles on Yorkis Gamboa because Gamboa is far outside. Then as you're trying to come forward to catch up with him, he comes in and he's throwing power shots. And it's not just power shots, it's two-handed power, very quick hands, right? And Gamboa, doesn't telegraph what he's doing. He can hit you low, he can hit you high, he can hit you with uppercuts. then he moves away, right? That's not Lopez. Whereas I don't know where Gamboa is going to be in the ring. And don't get me wrong, Gamboa, in my opinion, remains a flawed fighter. Just look at the number of times he's hit the canvas. Look at a Gamboa fight and ask yourself about his defense. But my point to you is simply this. I don't know where Gamboa is going to be in the ring. I know where Lopez is going to be in the ring. And because I know where Lopez is going to be in the ring, guys who play angles can play the angles on Lopez in a way that they can't with Yorkis Gamboa. So I didn't think the first fight here was close. I don't think Lopez had an off day. I think Lopez's problem was Orlando Salido and an inability to figure out Salido's style. Let me also point out, too, that, in my opinion, it's very hard for inverted fighters to adapt. It just is. I don't care if the inverted fighter, is a big name. The only inverted fighter I've really seen make significant changes in the ring during a fight was Marvelous Marvin Hagler, right? But most inverted fighters, because their dominant hand is out front, they end up being like Oscar De La Hoya, right? Oscar, interesting fighter. But if you look at Oscar, the mistakes he's making in the early rounds against Pernell Whitaker are the mistakes he's making in the later rounds against Pernell Whitaker, right? The guys who really adapt are the guys who, quite frankly, are fighting naturally. They have their dominant hand close to them, right? They have a jab hand, their, non-dominant hand out front, so they don't get tangled up, right? Because when you're inverted, it's not just your hands that are switched, but your dominant leg is also switched, right? And so my point to you is simply this. I haven't seen Juan Manuel Lopez make the kind of adjustments in a fight that would lead him to win the rematch against Orlando Salido. Okay? I don't consider this a five-star fight. I think Salido should be a decided favorite in this fight. I thought he took apart Juan Manuel Lopez. Let me also point out, too, that I know people are going to say the first fight was stopped by the referee. Thank God it was. Because this is a sport, we don't need to see champions get completely beaten up and have their careers ended. And I thought Lopez was getting hit so hard by Salido that was a distinct possibility. Let me also point out, too, that understand Salido beat Robert Guerrero. I understand he failed a drug test after the fight and got stripped of the win. But the point is, look at the Guerrero fight. You're talking about a tall guy who can fight long and has an excellent jab in Guerrero, right? Guerrero remains one of boxing's best fighters. And as you look at that fight, don't think about steroids, just think about boxing styles. Notice how Salido is able to get around Guerrero's jab and literally give Guerrero all kind of problems, throwing punches without getting hit, attacking while throwing hooks without getting hit. This is not Matthew Macklin, right? You notice how Matthew Macklin looks all marked up after a fight. Orlando Salido looks like he could go to a club after a fight, right? This is a guy who literally has figured out the sport and knows how to throw very hard punches from angles. I'm not saying he could beat everybody. He certainly lost to Yorkis Gamboa, looked terrible in, I believe it was the last round. I think he hit the canvas, right? I'm not saying Salido can beat everyone, but what I am saying is I expect him to once again beat Juan Manuel Lopez when these two fight in early March. And I don't care where the fight is. I think the style gap is so big that they could fight again in Puerto Rico, and I think Salido would still win. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com and predictboxing.blogspot.com. Thanks for watching.